Here we are, Laser Brains. We're about to review the most perfect movie ever made, Back to the Future. I'm your co-host, Mike Allen. As always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell, and yeah, we're going to be talking about Back to the Future today, and as always, we are joined by Champion.
Hey fellas, how's it going? And how are y'all doing today?
So this movie, I saw it 1,000 times as a kid. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, I couldn't decide which film was better, Back to the Future or Teen Wolf. I quickly realized Back to the Future was much better. Much better.
Yeah.
And now I've seen it a few times as an elder, and I think this movie is just so perfect. And every single time I watch it, I see something new I didn't notice before.
It's fantastic. Yeah. It's one of the rare movies where, like, it's perfect.
Yeah,
like,
it is perfect. It's perfect.
It's so solid. The script has no holes. Nope. Every frame in this movie has a purpose for being there.
Exactly.
Like every line, every little thing that happens in the background ends up coming back later. Like it's fantastic. It's such a good movie.
So I want to know, Champion, what's your experience with seeing this movie? Was it in the theater? Was it at home?
It was at home. I don't think... I think it was when it came out on video.
Sure.
That's when I saw it the first time. I didn't see it in theaters, but I was excited enough about it that we went out and rented it.
Sure.
And didn't wait for it to come on cable TV.
And what status did it have with you as a child?
I thought for a number of years, and by a number, it came out in 1985, which was how many years ago? 40 years ago. So it has held the status of being one of the greatest movies of all time for me for about 40 years. Yeah, 40. It was just instantly, I was entertained, I was enthralled, I was just, as a kid, I thought that the technology was the coolest thing ever. I thought that Doc Brown was the coolest weirdo scientist. Everything about it just spoke to me as a kid. But as I grew up, I started to notice more of the adult aspects of it, and as I started to appreciate film as an art form, I started to realize, wow, this is more than just a fun time travel movie. Sure. This is a cinematic masterpiece.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, I think that's also why it's revered for so long. It's just, not only is it a great movie, but it's so fun. It's not bleak like a lot of best movies ever. You know what I mean? It doesn't take itself seriously, and it just has so much fun.
Well, there are bleak portions though.
Oh sure, but
we should say that this came out in 1985, and some people have said Quentin Tarantino has said the 80s was not a good time for film. Okay. Listen, QT, we grew up in the 80s. It was the pinnacle of, I don't know, I guess family, fantasy, sci-fi films, as spearheaded by Spielberg, Lucas, and others. Robert Zemeckis is a Spielberg, protege. Bob Gale co-wrote this film. Again, you take it for granted when you're a kid and you watch it, you're like, oh, this is just another good movie. But then you watch it over and over and over, and like we've all said, you're watching this film going, oh my God, every shot, every line, every scene has a purpose, has a setup, and has a payoff. From the very first moment of setting up the fact that Marty McFly plays guitar, that he's friends with Doc Brown, the newscast with the plutonium, with the skateboard comes in and bumps into the plutonium, which I never noticed before today.
Are you serious?
I never noticed that in 40 years.
Really? Huh.
Never noticed it. Maybe I'm just not smart. I don't know. But just, again, we could talk about it. Well, we're going to talk about this movie all night. I don't even know where to start. Okay, let's start with the plot. Forget about the comedy. The plot of this film is perfect. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, again, I can't see any flaw in it. It's
even take out the comedy. The time travel itself is a perfectly plotted story, right?
The setup of it is so great. The beginning of the movie setting up Marty as a character, and then also setting up the city itself and kind of the history behind it.
Yep.
And all of these little tidbits you're getting at the beginning before they go back of this town play into the story later on. The trucks with like the mayor on it, or even like the protest outside of the clock tower, and the fact that she writes her phone number on that flyer, so he has it with it. Like it's just everything is set up so perfectly, and then the rest of the movie up until that point kind of just has to coast into this final thing. Like they set it up so perfectly that everything else I feel like just falls into place.
Well, okay, you raise a good point, because the halfway point of the movie is when Doc Brown realizes, oh, this is all we have to do. We have to wait until Saturday night. We get this bolt of lightning, and then we're going to send you back to the future. But
then we realize there are, in fact, 2 crises here. Not only do we have to get Marty back in time, which involves this whole process of trying to find a way to get this much energy, but we also learn that he's interfered with his parents' meeting, and it doesn't matter if Doc gets him back, because there's going to be nothing for him to go back to if they don't fix this other crazy urgent problem. It's like these insurmountable problems that they have to solve.
So there's like multiple layers of this plot. And I like what you said though, Josh, about how you said they just have to kind of coast into the solution, but they don't though. There's more. There's so many obstacles.
Yeah, I
right?
mean, even down to they finally get his parents to fall in love again.
Yes.
And then we're in the car, and of course, the electrical wire gets unplugged, so he's got to climb up, and then Marty's like, okay, don't worry, you're up there, you got the wire now, just plug it in and I'll get the car. The car won't start. It's just like everything.
I know.
It's just like
and then
building and building.
And then the wire is too short to reach because it's caught under the tree. Then he pulls it. It plugs in. But now it's unplugged on that end.
And then like even when he gets back to his normal time, he's got to race to go save Doc Brown.
Then his car
it's just
right. I know.
It's just like layer over layer over layer. Like it just builds up to this climax.
It's actually one of the best climaxes I've ever seen in a movie ever. It's like perfect. It's perfect. Like, okay, building up to the end, you like, it's like you said, Ian, first you have the climax of, here's the thing. The goal is Marty McFly is going to be in the car with his mother, and then he's going to put the moves on her, and is it George? George is going to come rescue him. But that doesn't even go right because he gets locked in the car by Biff and his cronies, and then now Biff is in the car with him.
Right.
So even that doesn't go as expected. And so the look on George's face when he realizes, oh my God, it's not Marty like we planned, it's Biff.
Yeah.
And that is actually the climax of the film.
Well, not even that. They build on it again. They're together and they go back into the dance, but like, they didn't have their first kiss, so we've got to play the song.
Yes,
and then even when they're dancing, some other guy butts in, and it's just like, it just keeps on building upon itself.
His hand fading out. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really great. And what you were saying, like what I was saying before about like coasting to the end, I don't mean like everything's just whatever, but I feel like plot wise, it's set up so everything kind of just falls into place by the end story wise.
It's like watching a Rube Goldberg machine that has been meticulously set up, and you're just kind of watching all the dominoes fall.
Right.
There's no laziness to it. There's no laziness in coasting to the climax,
right?
Because you've done so much work to get there. You've wound all this intricate stuff up, and now you're just letting it go, like Doc Brown's little wind-up car.
100%.
And it's one thing after another. Just that pays off, then that pays off, then that pays off, then that pays off.
Right.
It's like looking at a really long mathematical equation with a lot of parentheses.
Yeah.
Right.
And at the end, all the parentheses close, and it's perfect.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, is that underneath that or on top of that is you have these. It's so much fun. And I think all these things when you're a kid and when you see these things, you don't realize. Like, okay, let's go through this cast. Michael J. Fox, who at the time was starring in Family Ties, who, Ian, I'm sure you watched it every week.
I watched a little bit of Family Ties. Yeah.
Like Michael Keaton was already a star. I don't know if you ever saw Family Ties.
I haven't seen. I know of it, but I haven't seen.
Oh my God! It's one of the best sitcoms of the '80s. It's really
a hilarious contrast with the Michael J. Fox from here, where he plays a buttoned-up young conservative.
Oh, interesting.
It's really sharply written. It's really smart. And this is a shout out to Michael Gross, genius of that show. Michael Gross, who we all know from Tremors. Have you ever seen Tremors?
Okay, yeah.
He's the crazy guy with the guns in Tremors. He plays the father. Anyway, so Michael J. Fox was shooting Family Ties at the same time he was doing this, getting like 3 hours of sleep a night, somehow manages to turn in this incredible performance. Perfect. Ian, what'd you think of him as Marty McFly? Like, what can you say, right? It's perfect.
You could not have cast, and we're going to be going down the line and talking about every single person who starred in this movie. And my reaction is going to be, you could not have cast a better person.
Right.
You're going to hear this a lot from me
They
through
almost
the course
didn't.
of this podcast.
Right.
It wasn't. They went through 2 weeks of shooting with Eric Stoltz.
Who's a Michael J. Fox lookalike to some extent.
Right.
But he's not nearly as
There's
charismatic.
also apparently even shots in this movie where like it's the back of his head and it's still him.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about, that 2 weeks into shooting
I mean, it's incredible that they shot that much and they were just like, you know what, this isn't working. I feel so bad for Eric Stoltz, but
you gotta feel bad for him, but you also have to have so much respect for the people that are running this show to get that far in and say, you know what, I'm not feeling it.
Exactly.
Sorry, Eric, we're calling in Michael J. And then for the results to be what we have,
right.
It'd be different if they fucked it up somehow.
Yep.
And if it was the other way around and it was, Michael J. Fox is too busy, we're gonna get Eric Stoltz to come in.
It wouldn't have been the same.
We might not be talking about this movie.
That's true. I mean, he did a stellar job. He's so funny. His delivery is so unique, right?
He's energetic.
Yep.
He's always like he's animated. He's running around.
He's passionate.
Yeah,
like we feel like he really cares about Doc Brown.
Yeah, these lines that I feel like wouldn't have much like meaning or depth work with him. Like when he's repeating a lot of like the science jibber jabber from Doc, like it's believable when he's.
You're right.
Yeah, what the hell is a gigawatt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
They weave that stuff so perfectly. Like they mix in like the MacGuffin, the techno babble with the pseudoscience, with the real science, and you just don't even question it. It's so perfectly executed, right? But now we got to talk about sent from above, Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown. Like you said, Ian, there is no other actor on earth who could play that role as good.
No.
What do you think?
Not only does he play a great performance, but he does two great performances.
Yeah.
Because old Doc Brown and young Doc Brown are two completely different characters.
That's a good point.
They do.
And you don't really notice that until the end of the film when he's been shot, but he's got the bulletproof vest on, and he wakes up, and we've just had an hour and a half of young, crazy Doc, and now this is chill Doc, and he's like, well, I just thought, what the heck?
Yeah.
He is. I don't know where he got it from.
Well,
this is
Marty, right? Like, oh, you mean Christopher
Christopher
Lloyd?
Lloyd.
I was like, well, Marty changed him, right?
Where did he pull this performance out
yeah.
from?
Because I mean, he was in Taxi. Was he already in Search for Spock, or was that?
I think Search for Spock was 1986.
Okay, so we know he's a great actor, but yeah, it's just he's one of those guys that just pulled this out of his ass and just delivered an incredible performance.
Yeah, he's like the mad scientist of all mad scientists. Like I can't imagine a character like this before
right
85, right? Like it just doesn't.
Well, and the thing too is that, I mean, as far as I know, everyone in the audience tonight had seen the film, except maybe Roman, because they don't show these films in Russia. Sorry. But all these expressions that he gave, everyone in the audience is dying laughing because he knows how to work the audience, probably because of all his experience on Taxi and it's a sitcom. He's playing in front of a live audience. He knows how to work an audience. So that totally came through. The other thing too, this is also the writing, but the fact that when Marty goes back in time and he sees Doc, and the first thing he does, Doc pulls him into the room and he's got this gigantic doohickey on his head. Not only is it funny, but what a great way to get all that exposition out of Marty, right? To disguise it as this elaborate gag. It's brilliant. Brilliant writing.
You said something earlier, and I think that's why he is such a perfect Doc Brown is there are other people that could have done a fine job saying all of the goofy lines, but it's when he's not saying anything that he makes Doc Brown. When his mom comes and visits him in the garage, and she's kind of like trying to come on to him, and you see him in the background, like
I know he's like leading him a car,
like he's slowly walking around the DeLorean for the entire conversation, just like.
I can't imagine that it was described like that in the script, totally right? So it's 100% Christopher Lloyd in that scene playing off of what's going on, and I'm sure giving like a whole new meaning that was originally intended, right?
Agreed.
Like his portrayal of this character is like 1 in a million.
I agree. Okay, we get another 1 in a million actor, Crispin Glover. Like,
what a guy.
What a genius. Like, this role could have been, like, they could have got some goofy actor, just a regular sitcom actor to play this role, but instead they got Crispin Glover, who, it's like, does he even know he was in a movie? Like, he was just like a fucking maniac for 2 hours. And like
Crispin Glover, this is my hot take. Crispin Glover is the best actor in this film.
I can't argue with that. Yeah, I think he might be.
Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, Crispin Glover just sneaks in just a little bit above. And here's the thing, and this is, I've watched this movie 8 billion times. This is what sort of clicked maybe 6 months ago as I'm watching it. Crispin Glover puts on a performance where the Crispin Glover from the original 1985, they go back in time. Now you see him as a kid in high school. And you look at him and you say, yes, that's plausible. That kid would turn out to be that adult. He has his arc. And this is the other thing about his character. Crispin Glover is the character in this movie with an arc. Yes, nobody else really has an arc.
That's true.
But
Not
he
even
has
Marty.
A very strong character arc.
Yep.
And when his arc is finished and we come back to 1985, that George McFly is just as plausible coming from him as that George McFly.
Yeah.
He managed to sell both versions of himself as well as selling the teenage version of himself. Mind blown.
Yeah, I agree. And it's weird because everybody, like I said, it's like everyone knows they're in a movie. Everyone knows they're in a comedy, but he's on like another dimension.
Right.
Like at the beginning of the movie, as soon as you see him and he's got the I laugh. And like everyone who saw that movie in 1985 was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Right? And just like his haircut and but he also has like the pathos of like being the writer, but he doesn't want to show anybody his stories and just everything about it. And the fact that he's like an outcast and, you know, and he gets so easily fooled by the Darth Vader thing. Like, it's just it's perfect. And I got to say, I was saying this today, when Marty McFly goes back in time and he's sitting and what's his name? Crispin Glover's in the background the whole time he's on the payphone. Then he sits down and he's there, but the camera never draws attention to him. So it's like, oh my God, he's sitting there the whole time. When Biff comes in, is like, hey McFly, and they both turn around. Mm-hmm. Even though I've seen it a million times, there's something about the way it's done.
Yeah,
I can't even like absorb it. It's so well done.
Couple of seconds, just the cinematography is perfect because you got Lou who's serving Marty a coffee.
Yeah,
and he is blocking George.
Yes,
he's blocking Crispin Glover in the frame, and he puts the coffee down and takes a nickel, and Marty just does this.
Yep.
And then Lou walks out of frame, and now you can see that George is sitting right next to him in the exact same pose.
Yeah.
And then they both turn around at the exact same time.
And then after Biff leaves, now George is blocking Marty, and Marty leans into the shot and is glaring like, oh my God, this is my father. Just and we should mention that's the impetus for the whole story, because I believe it was Bob Gale was looking at his yearbook and he saw a picture of his father. He's like, I wonder if I would have been friends with my father if I knew him in high school. And then he wrote this whole movie around it. Like that's incredible.
That's so smart.
Yep,
yeah.
Yep. It's genius. Crispin Glover, what do you think, Josh?
Yeah, he's great. It's so funny saying like, oh, he was made for this role because he didn't return.
That's true. That's a whole other story. One, right?
Yeah. Although I'm pretty sure they could have gotten him back if they tried hard enough.
That's true. Yes.
And there were some repercussions from that, as we're all aware of.
That's right. He invented new laws for Hollywood. That's right. That's right. Yeah. What were we going to say, Josh?
He does a fantastic job. He is probably like the closest thing to Doc Brown to be like a character, like a caricature. Like he's so goofy in his like nerdy role.
Sure.
And you buy it when he turns, when he finally has the courage to stand up for himself.
Oh, and such a great climax. Yeah. Yes.
And I do love that, that changes like everything in the future, right? Yep. It's so smart. Like that, going back in time, like going back to present day doesn't return to the status quo. Everything changes. I think that's one of the charms of this movie, and you can really clearly see it with his character the most when we come back. Like we do see like the Twin Pines is now Lone Pines, or like all these small little things, but his character change, it does feel like shocking almost when he comes back on screen and it's like a different character.
Yeah. But it's completely believable.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why it is so believable is because even when he's a kid and he's getting picked on, there's something about him that he feels comfortable in his own skin, right? Like he's still out doing things. He still goes to the diner and he has breakfast. And even though Biff is picking on him, he's kind of trying to joke around with them, right? Like he's not just cowering and please don't hit me. He's still interacting and he's still asserting his personality, right? The fact that he's a nerd is kind of incidental, and then he just ends up taking a different path.
Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah. It's all about the choices he makes, not kind of like it's not his personality. He's not doomed.
He gains confidence, but that's it, really. Like he doesn't become a different person. He becomes a more confident version of himself.
That's a good point. Yeah. Okay, we have to talk about Leah Thompson as Marty's mother. So good in this movie. And when I rewatched it 3 years ago, not 2 years ago, not 1 year ago, but 3 years ago, because I've watched it every year since, I realized that as a kid, I was in love with her. And I still am. I think she's so perfect in this role. Perfect. And we have to mention, like you said earlier, Josh, like, oh, this film is like, it's fun. It's this, that, and the other. And then I think it was you, Ian, that said it does go to some dark places.
It does.
Let's address the fact that this film deals with the Oedipus complex.
It's
right?
It's so uncomfortable.
Right.
Like I've seen this movie so many times, and still every time I'm grossed out.
It's right. It's
by
crazy
these moments
when you think about what's happening.
Yeah, and I think that's also why it works. Like, her portrayal just gives you the heebie-jeebies. Like, sure. I still cringe every time I watch this movie. But it's like,
but it also makes it potent because it's dealing with a taboo subject.
Right.
And I think that's another reason why it was so, like, let's be clear. This movie was gigantic when it came out. I think it made like $350 million
which is huge.
In 1985 money, which now is like $3 billion. I don't even know what it is, but yeah, Ian, what do you think of Leah Thompson?
She was great. And what's more, I think she might have had the best difference between old her and young her.
Yeah.
Is that her? That's probably more makeup and that sort of thing than her characterization. But when we're seeing her in 1985 at the beginning of the film, and she's just walking around throwing a cake at the table, drinking vodka, waxing poetic about bygone days.
Sure.
When we see her in 1955, it's this holy shit moment. This cannot be the same actor, but it is. They did such a good job separating
you're right.
older her from the younger her.
And I don't think I appreciated that as a kid.
Yeah.
But she's acting completely different.
It is older, interesting because George is the opposite, right? Like the present day at the beginning movie and past George are the same. Like they don't feel like different characters, but she really does.
Yeah, you can tell that she's kind of sick of her life, and she doesn't like this is. I'm just gonna think about high school and talk about this dance again.
I never really thought about that too. Is like it's almost the opposite of George. Like George changes by the end of the movie, but she changes at the beginning of the movie, and then her character throughout is almost the same character at the end of the movie.
That's a good
you know
point.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like she kind of stays
She's
herself.
able to be herself. Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, it's
George drags her down.
Right.
Yep, that's a good point. Okay, so we need you to access your doohickey here. Who is the actor that played Biff? Because I can't remember his name, unless you guys know.
Thomas F. Wilson.
Yes.
Okay. He was so good as Biff. And we're only talking about the first Back to the Future, but I know in the other movies he plays different characters. But in
There's other Back to the Futures?
There is. And they're not nearly as good. Sorry, guys. He is so perfect as Biff. And at the end of the movie, when his character is completely different, again, the audience, sorry, Mr. McFly. Like everybody's dying laughing because this guy who's been this intimidating bully the whole movie, the fact that he's able to play it that way at the end is, I think, so well done. I just thought he was perfect. He's like the ultimate, like of all the 80s bullies, who's better than him? Maybe the guy from Karate Kid? Not even. This guy's better. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, he's great, and he plays a great villain. I think he shines in the past when he's like the younger version of himself.
Sure.
He's both like very funny as a villain, but then when he is trying to take advantage of Leah Thompson's character,
it's perfect.
It's like disturbing.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
agree.
Like
I agree.
You fear for that character, and you buy that he's doing this. You know what I mean? That he's this kind of level of evil.
I agree. Yeah,
but I will say, I think that the new present is the only thing I feel like doesn't feel right
with Biff. Oh, I think he's right.
And maybe the whole movie. It's just I don't fully buy that. Like I buy that the bully would stick around and bully the kid for until into the present.
Sure.
But when that changes, I don't buy that the bully is going to stick around to the person who stuck up for himself and like the like. But
okay, I know what you're saying, but I buy that it's a movie.
Sure.
And this is what I mean is that there's only like 5 main characters, and they kind of all have to stay. I mean, if the movie ended with and Biff lives in Cincinnati, and it's like, who cares? Like he's got to be part of that circle,
right?
Or else it has no meaning. Right?
Yeah, and I think that they could have done something. So he's still part of the circle. Like maybe he's working for George now, and he's still kind of like, I'll wax your car. Like I don't buy that he's like, yes, George, like this. You know what I mean?
I don't know. Ian,
I
what
feel
do you
like
think?
him being like bitter about it.
I'm Team Mervell on this one.
Your team who?
Team Mervell.
Mervell.
Oh, okay. Like, who the hell are you talking about?
Yeah. He's just a little too goofy.
Yeah.
He, I would think, would be bitter as all heck. Right? I mean, like he's been a pill the entire movie. He's been punching people. He's been getting his own way. He's been a menace. And then this one time he gets punched by the nerd, and that changes the rest of his life. And now he's I got you.
Yeah.
No, he's that's the one part that doesn't really track for me. I could see him in that role. I could see him having to wax the car, but I can't see him being all that happy about it.
But we also don't know what's happened in the ensuing 30 years,
but
right?
But I don't want to have to speculate on that.
And
I'm just saying, I didn't need it. I was like, this is fine. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it is slightly over the top, but everything is kind of like at the beginning of the movie, the characterizations are very broad. Like the mother is an alcoholic, and Crispin Glover is like whatever he is. The sister is one thing. The brother, like,
and even Biff's character at the beginning is a caricature
Yes.
of a slimy 80s.
Exactly.
Right? Like he's in a leisure suit.
Right. And even the principal, like I think they're all exaggerated characters for the most part. So I'm fine with it.
I mean, like I'm not going to complain about
Yeah.
it.
Right, yeah,
like it's
yeah.
just that's the one thing,
Sure.
and I think you picked up on it too. That it's just
And
I might
think-
have done that different.
I think with hindsight, it's also easier to say this.
Sure.
And I know we're talking about this movie, but because we have Back to the Future Part 2, I feel like that is kind of what his character is, like what we're talking about at the beginning of Part 2, when he finds the almanac and that changes now the future.
Sure.
That kind of feels like what I'm thinking, like this slimy guy that kind of wants his revenge, but he's stuck in this shitty job working for the guy that finally stood up to the bully kind of thing.
Well, okay, here's the thing. Now that we're on to criticisms, as we've said earlier, this is a nearly perfect film, but now we're going to address a few tiny criticisms we have.
Sure.
Ian, was that your criticism or was there another one?
No, there's a couple other little criticisms. My big criticism, I don't like the way that they were just, and I mean, this is the 80s, different time, but Marty and George just being so cavalier in the way that they're planning on using Lorraine to try and...
Sure.
You know what, George? Come around 9:00. I'm going to be sexually assaulting her. Just open the door and stop it, and you'll live happily ever after.
Yeah.
And like that's like it ends up in terms of the story. That's the way that you set up now that Biff is in the car, right?
Sure.
And that all tracks, but just when he's hanging up the laundry and
Very casual.
you mean you're gonna touch her on her? Like, no, don't worry about it. It's all an act. Yeah, it's an act for everybody except for her.
Yeah.
I mean, if the plan goes as planned, he's assaulting his mom
Right.
in the car
Sure,
in order
that's
to
a
get
good
his parents
point.
together.
That's a
And
good
it just
point.
gives me a bit of the ick.
The heebie-jeebies.
The heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
That's one thing. There's another thing that's a nitpick that I don't even know if I want to bring it
Okay,
up.
bring it up. Bring it up,
on.
Ian. Come on. We got dozens of people listening right now.
The distance between Hill Valley and the mall and Marty's house
Okay.
changes based on, I don't know, when he goes back in time to 1955. It's at like 2 a.m. He crashes into this
Yep.
this barn, and then he speeds out and he gets to where his house is, and the sun's coming up.
That bothered me too.
And then he walks to Hill Valley 2 miles, and he's there in time to catch his dad eating breakfast at a diner. So 6 hours have gone by. Now we get back to 1985. He's in downtown Hill Valley, right across the street from the diner. Car won't start. He sees the Libyans drive by. It's what, 1:20?
10 minutes
It's 1:26, and he runs to the mall.
Yep.
And he gets there 30 seconds after the van does. And now it's 1:35 or something. It's 10 minutes it takes him to run downtown to the mall. So like, which is it? Which is
That's
it?
a good point.
It
That's a good
doesn't
point.
matter. Doesn't matter. It's a
Yeah,
nitpick.
it's like one of those movie
Sure.
things
But
where
even when I was like a kid and he slams on the brakes at the construction site for his house and the sun's up, I'm like, it was dark 2 seconds
It doesn't
ago.
make, you're right. No, because it's pitch black and then he pulls out and then it's a little bit light. And then the third shot, it's completely daylight. And then he says to himself, oh, don't worry, it's just a dream. But it's like, what was he driving for 5 hours? And then he said that, right? Like it makes no sense. You're right.
I get it though, because
Yeah.
the movie has to happen.
Yeah.
And you can't test a time machine out in the middle of the day.
Sure.
And you can't have him walk into Hill Valley in the middle of the night. So there has to be something that happens in between. And there's nowhere for him to go, nothing for him to do.
Even just to dissolve to show time has passed. A little something would have helped. Yeah. Okay, so Josh, what are your nitpicks?
I feel like it was just the Biff thing
Okay,
at the
okay.
end. I think everything else works for me
Okay.
in this version, like in part one.
So I've got one nitpick, and it's I guess you could call it the white savior trope. The fact that Marty McFly, white teenager, goes back in time and teaches Chuck Berry's cousin how to invent rock and roll.
Right.
That is ridiculous in my opinion, and I can forgive it. I'm not going to cancel the movie. I'm not going to go on Twitter. I'm not going to say this movie's problematic. We can't watch it anymore.
Keep in mind that he also invents skateboarding.
Yes,
And-
although I think Michael J. Fox did invent skateboarding, didn't he?
I thought Tony Hawk did.
Okay, no, but seriously, I think this movie helped popularize the sport of skateboarding, but I could be
Interesting.
wrong. I think it did, yeah. In 1985, I think it's a strong case to be made for that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, okay, so other than that, this movie, I give it out of 10, a 9.8. What do you give it, Josh?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there is a movie that is like doesn't have these small nitpicks. So I feel like anything can.
Sure, every movie does.
For
yes.
me, I feel like it's a 10.
Okay.
I think it is
with
one
the
of those.
understanding that there's of course nitpicks, but they don't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I saw in the reflection of Marty's sunglasses at one point, I saw a barn door and some lights, right? Some stage lights.
That's a piece of crap. It's
Terrible,
a 0 out of
terrible.
10. It's garbage. Don't watch
but
it.
you are going to have these things. You're going
course.
to have
Right.
little things that slip through, and it's fine. And you know, stuff like that sometimes makes me feel as though I'm watching a piece of art
Yeah.
instead
handmade.
of yeah, exactly. Like, people made this, and oh shit, you left the barn door in the frame. Whatever. You're still trying really hard to make a movie. And compare to like a lot of the sci-fi stuff that's coming out nowadays, that it just looks so pristine, like it's a video game, and there's nothing wrong with any shot, but there's also no soul.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that at this time they had to really put a lot of thought and think about every single shot and how it's going to work, which kind of helped the craft. Now it's so easy to do. I mean, I say easy to do, but
fix things in
fix things in post and or do visual effects. They just get some poor tiny studio to do it in 2 weeks or whatever for their crunch time, and then they push it out. There's no like time being spent on thinking about how this is supposed to be done and how it's supposed to work, right?
And I want to say one more thing. The special effects, like it's so simple. It's a DeLorean, which I didn't know anything about, but apparently it was an infamous car that had funny doors that failed, blah, blah. And when it drives, it leaves a trail of fire, and they need lightning to get back. And it's just these simple everyday things that everyone knows. It's nothing elaborate. And then the flux capacitor is just it's like everyone can draw the flux capacitor, right?
Yeah.
All these simple things, and you just buy it, right?
But
all makes
it's also
sense.
done so convincingly. Like, everything is practical. Everything is built. Like this car, yeah, it's a real car, but there's been so much science stuff crammed in there.
Right.
And going back to Christopher Lloyd, one of the things that I love about his character is that it seems as though he doesn't even know what he's doing.
Right,
Like he doesn't think this is going to work.
Yep.
Like, he tests it out like in the mall, and he is as surprised as everyone when
True.
it works. And you see like his trepidation as he's walking towards the time machine after it reappears. He doesn't know that it's going to be cold. He doesn't know that all this smoke is going to start billowing out of the back. He's as freaked out about this as anyone. So that it makes sense now when he is showing Marty everything. Let me show you how it works. Let me show you how it works.
Yeah.
And he's excited about it. And we're getting explained all this stuff as Marty is. So now we know what all these controls do. We know what this gauge is. Oh, that means he's out of plutonium.
Yeah, I remember he's like, let me show you how it works.
Yeah.
And so now
First,
he
you turn the
knows-
time circuits
yeah,
on.
and so now
you
we
see
know
that they're
he
down
knows,
there.
Oh, it's brilliant.
And you can see
Yeah.
how you could accidentally turn it on when you're shifting gears.
Yep. It's brilliant. It's brilliantly done. I agree.
But it's not tedious.
Right.
It doesn't
There's
feel
not
like
a
there's
moment wasted in this film.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like they're sitting us down to teach us these things that we
No.
need to know.
Yeah.
It's just part of the
Yep.
story. It's part of the movie. Yeah.
Oh boy. So there you go, folks. One of the most perfect movies we've ever reviewed. One of the most enjoyable movies we've ever reviewed.
And we're
I
probably gonna talk about this for the next 45 minutes after we
Yeah,
wrap the
we're just not
podcast.
going to
Wrapping
record
up,
it just
it's
to
gonna-
mess with you. So anyway, join us every couple weeks for Laser Brains. We review science fiction, fantasy, and other fun genres. And then in between, join us for Tape Crusaders, where
Yep.
we talk about superhero movies and TV shows. And don't forget, every Wednesday at Meteor, most Wednesdays, we have a movie night here. And coming up very soon is going to be Shocktober. Right? We're going to be talking about horror films and watching horror films, so be sure to join us for that. I want to thank you, Joshua Mervell, for joining us, and tell us where you can see these episodes.
Yeah, you can find all of our stuff over on our website at thecomicbooksyndicate.com. All of our podcasts are video format, so you can also find them over on our YouTube channel. Leave us a like, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about the stuff we're talking about. What did you think about Back to the Future? Is it a perfect 10 out of 10 movie for you? Let us know.
And thank you, Champ Ian, for having us every week here.
Thanks, fellas. I appreciate it. Love watching. You know what? I even like watching the bad ones with you guys.
Aw, thanks, Ian.
Shucks.
Okay. Okay, see you next time. Bye.
Bye.